This piece of content is brought to you by Millionaire Match. Use code 9950, that's 9950, to unlock a special treat on Millionaire Match when you sign up through the link below. And then it is also brought to you by cdkeyoffer.com. Use offer code BrokenSilicon to save 25% on all Microsoft software. And we'll talk about these sponsors more later, but for now, let's just get on with the show. And welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom, and today I am joined by my co-host,
Dan.
How are you doing, Dan?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing, Tom?
I'm good. I have to say, I was just saying this to you offline before we started recording. Slightly shorter than usual script. Usually, just so people know, they're like 9 to 12 pages. If it gets over 12, it's probably going to be a very long episode. We haven't had one of those for a while. I think we've gotten very good at like honing exactly the points that we need to touch on every 2 weeks. And if it's 8 or less, then it's going to be one of those rare 70-minute episodes that almost never happens anymore. But I got to say, I thought this was going to be a 70-minute episode 3 days ago because I'm like, we'll get to the 9070 GRE. There's some rumors kind of Super, but were it not for some last minute leaks to be grabbed by this channel, I don't know that we would have had more than, we would have had a few serious news stories, but only a few, and half of them that honestly in a 2-3 hour episode, we might make a wrap up one. Like it's that time of the year.
Well, it happens sometimes. We're between big trade shows, and right now is the dearth of news period of the news cycle, usually, of the yearly news cycle, I should say.
Which I remember, it's funny to think back on when this was first started in 2019, Broken Silicon, that is, and like how we were still finding our footing, and like, God, there's so many silly things we used to do. Like I would make a video on a review day on a Wednesday, and then we'd also record that day. And so there'd be like a 3-hour podcast on Thursday that was delayed a ton, followed by the previous day on a Wednesday, some 20-30 minute video. And it's like, do we really need to do both? Did we really need to delay it? Couldn't we have just had a normal episode on Monday and then covered it after that? And it's just funny, as this goes on with the news cycles, also just being able to adjust, like, I'm going to take vacations in April and May because that is when there's not news.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's a more well-oiled machine than it used to be, I would say. And yeah, there's not usually much of a reason to delay episodes, which is, nice to keep on a consistent schedule. Except when, they're nice enough to put a review on like a Monday morning or Tuesday or something, then we kind of have to.
Which on that note, I will say the next news episode, Dan, will probably be on a Tuesday or Wednesday because that's when Computex is. Of course, we're going to discuss. AMD should have a bunch of announcements, perhaps Nvidia will. And that's also just so everybody knows, and we'll be getting back from a vacation. As always, we are workaholics, so we're going to be gone, not the week this is coming out, but the following week. But you won't really know because we're going to have all of this content dropping anyways, including exclusive content like Die Shrink if you join the Patreon. But it might be nice too, right, Dan, for us to delay the release to like Wednesday, so that when we get back from Europe, we are not the first thing we're doing trying to cobble together a 2-hour episode the first day we're home and possibly jet lagged, which we're going to Scotland over the break, just so everyone knows.
Or a jet lagged episode might be fun. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, again, I think we're getting better at this where we almost always, me and you, record pretty much between 6. We started a little early today. Usually we record it like between 6:30 or 8, get done by 10 p.m. on a Sunday. We used to like often just go from 9 to midnight. And I will say, even though that usually made the episodes longer because we weren't as on track, you did get some fun opinions out of us, though, once we were getting loopy at 11 p.m. Not opinions I think were necessarily wrong, but we were unencumbered and maybe extra honest, maybe too honest at times.
Yeah. We'll say correctly or extra honest instead of too honest, to be charitable to ourselves, Tom.
All right. Well, now let us be charitable to me by letting me get away with that transition to story number one. RX 9070 GRE announced for launch this month. I will first quote from Tech Power Up and then move on to the editorialization. AMD has officially announced the RX 9070 GRE, the China-exclusive high-end RDNA 4 gaming GPU, along with a May 8 pre-order date. As with previous iterations of the GRE, the 9071 is a trimmed-back version of the higher-tier models, with both less VRAM and fewer compute units than its other RDNA 4 counterparts. Along with the official announcement and the May 8 release date or pre-order date, whatever it is, at least when pre-ordering retail listing has been spotted online, with retail prices coming in at 4,499 Chinese yuan, I believe it is, which is $617 converted. The retail unit is an Asus Tri fan card, so you should expect this to be above the claimed MSRP of 4,199 Chinese yuan, which is $577 US converted. Now, that sounds like a lot, but Kerry Sagata, contributor to Moore's Law, instead looked, and that is 7% cheaper still than what you would get for a 5070. So whatever, how it works there, AMD is pricing this in China 7% below its main competition, the 5070 12 gigabyte. So, yep, the 9070 GRE is launching this week with 48 compute units and 12 gigabytes of slower 18 gigabit per second GDDR6. This variant will also, yes, be China exclusive, although we could expect some units to trickle in and get reviewed probably by Hardware Unboxed over the next month. But what should we expect from performance? Well, scratch math that I did before we started recording would suggest that this thing should be around 20% weaker than the 9070 you would think. It's actually clocked, I believe, 10% faster, but then, of course, has like 15% less compute units and, a fourth of its memory bus removed. So you would think it should be around a 7800 XT. However, AMD's own claims on their website suggest that it should trade blows or, according to them, even possibly be 6% faster than the 7900 GRE and 1440B, which, if that is true, that would suggest that despite having a fourth of its memory bus removed, the 192-bit 9070 GRE is only around 10%, maybe 15% slower than the 256-bit 9070 at most. And personally, I expect the truth to be in the middle. So maybe around 7900 GRE performance in 1440p, but weaker in 4K. But even if that happens, I still think that's kind of crazy. The 7900 GRE that this is being compared to has 67% more compute units and a third more bandwidth. So if this happens, AMD launches a 192-bit 48 compute unit card that competes with a 80 compute unit 256-bit card from the previous gen. Wow, that really proves that RDNA 4 is insanely efficient with bandwidth compared to Nvidia, because again, this would probably put it I think 5-10% faster than the 5070, and the 5070 is freaking using GDDR7. So
I mean, yeah, just looking at it architecturally, if these claims hold true, it just lends more credence to the position we've held here that RDNA 4, at least architecturally speaking, is the most impressive uplift this generation, even if those gains, even if those gains aren't seen at the top because they didn't release whatever top die they were working on.
Yeah, again, it does make you wonder, if they had a 384-bit card with 96 compute units. I mean, at a minimum, I think it probably would lose to the 5090, but I think it'd be pretty close while having, a substantially smaller die size and cheaper memory and less memory to put on the board. It still makes us wonder, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
I think that would have been pretty good. I think it would have been pretty good. And especially because the one that we leaked, of course, was 20 chiplets and probably would have raffle stopped the 5090 in all honesty. Nice writes in and says, "Hi, Tom. I'm sure you're tired of RDNA 4 questions. Nope. This is a job I love, and I expect that this entire year. But I was wondering about the actual BOM cost, if there are any ideas. I feel like there are still folks that are frustrated with prices compared to older generations, which is understandable, but I keep getting the idea that AMD already isn't getting much of a margin out of the 9070 series as is. On the topic, any idea of RTX 5000 series margins as well?" So I think the 9070 XT is fine margins compared to the 7800 XT. It uses 10% more silicon around, I think, total maybe 20%.
That sounds right. I mean,
and it has the
Three
same cost of, it's like
346. I'm looking at it right now to
379.
357 or something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So
So
not
yeah,
that
so
much
like
more.
10% more silicon. And now look, I know that a third of the 7800 XT was 6 nanometer, but there was also 3D
Mhm.
stacking that was involved. So there would be a difference in price there, but I don't think it'd be drastically different. Like, I don't know what it would be. I'm just guessing $20 more, $30 more at most. And the RAM costs the same. The board is actually maybe a little cheaper because of that as well, or at least the same price. So if the 7800 XT was fine at $500, I think the 9070 XT is fine at even $550. So I think at $600 or $550, and certainly if AMD gets any extra money from the marked up models, although I don't know that they do, they're making probably a little more profit margin than the 7800 XT, but they're not like milking it super
Sure.
hard. They're doing fine. Now compare that to Nvidia, which is Nisa also asked about. Look, the 5070 is nearly the same die size as the B580, which probably broke even at $300. Add $30 to go from GDDR6 to GDDR7 at most. I don't know, man. I think, yeah, the 5070 should be called the 5060 Ti 12 gigabyte should be $450. Yeah, Nvidia is milking like crazy. There's no way around that.
Oh, well, I mean, I think the fact that they attempted to release a 12 gigabyte card at that segment this year proves that were attempting to milk at least, and
Yeah.
that failed miserably.
Yeah, at least so far.
Yeah.
All right. Now let us move on to story number 2. RX 9060 XT 16 gigabyte and unfortunately 8 gigabyte announcement rumored for Computex. So first quoting from Benchlife utilizing Google Translate. After the launch of the Nvidia GeForce RTX 5060 8 gigabyte GDDR7, AMD is also expected to announce the 9060 XT series graphics cards on May 21st. But the related graphics cards may not be available until June, according to these people. Now, I also have a quote here that I want to read from one of my sources. I actually got this last week, almost included it in the video I put out, but decided that video is already getting long enough as it is. Let's just save this for rounding out 9060 XT updates. So someone reached out to me, an AMD partner, same one that I quoted as AMD, considering at least minimalizing, I guess you would put it, how many 8 gigabyte 9060 XTs or how prominent it was in the launch. But this person confirmed that it is still in full production. Now, for those who forgot, by the way, I don't know what it was, 2 weeks ago or something, I leaked that the 9060 XT was 8 gigabyte, was already in production. So it's very unlikely AMD was going to cancel it. But they were considering it, and the fact that they were considering it is crazy. That tells you how bad they perceived the 5060 Ti reviews to be. That hopefully it might become China only. They'd stop production and release a limited amount of them. I am told no, it is still in full production by this source, and that it is likely to still launch on release date, even if they were having second thoughts. Again, hopefully this will be focused on OEMs, which maybe there's rumors out there that it will be, or for the Chinese market. But at least right now, nothing's really changed from their original plans, which everyone I've spoken to behind the scenes, including this source, says it will get really, really bad reviews almost certainly. So I don't know. I'd throw that in there. Anyways, summarizing. Yep. So the 9060 XT series will unfortunately be a series. While we had hoped that the full Navi 44 GPU would almost solely come with 16 gigabytes, due to the suggested 8 gigabyte version making little sense, AMD is still preparing this skimped variant. It should be noted, though, that previous leaks out of this channel did not, I'm just going to repeat myself if I say that, did not say that it would be canceled. The previous video, simply, if you read the title closely, only argued they really, really should cancel it. And I heard they might. So far, sounds like AMD isn't taking our advice. Again, I hope they change their mind. But by the way, one more addendum to this story. At least in the European Union, retailers are showing that the 5060 Ti 8 gigabyte is a minuscule portion of total 5060 Ti sales. I forgot what it was. I think it was like a 30th or 20th. Demonstrating people have now fully realized, finally, the limits of 8 gigabytes and what that does to their gaming experience. So we in the broader market can agree with our sources here. Hopefully AMD only launches the 9068 gigabyte as a GRE, since that will appeal to their marketing team in the Chinese market. If there isn't enough reason to save the precious Navi 44 dies for SKUs with enough memory for modern gaming. Yeah, and on that, just to waste any of the supply for 8 gigabyte cards people don't want, when it would cost an extra, what would it be, like 20 something dollars? Like, it's 4 times, like $25 maybe to add another 8 GB, and then now you can charge at least another 50. It makes so little sense to me. The bottleneck is not VRAM supply either. It's supply of 4nm from TSMC. So you'd think, let's milk the thing that's bottlenecked more. I don't get the 8 GB thing. I think it's entirely idiotic.
Yeah, I keep trying to think like if there's a version of an 8 GB Navi 44 card that makes sense. And I don't know, maybe a disabled below a 9060 Navi 44 with 8 GB makes sense, or like, I don't know, having part of the memory bus disabled. So that would be like 12 GB or something.
But
I
then
don't
they'd
know.
have to use clamshell memory, remember?
True. It's just, I don't know. Even like a base 9060 with just 8 GB of RAM makes very little sense to me unless they can sell that thing for like,
Honestly,
I don't know, $230.
I think 200. I mean, this.
I would rather just see the 7600 base cut still be produced, and they just make that as their 8 GB card going forward, because I just don't think anything above that is really needed for 1080p, and I don't think you can really advertise an 8 GB card for anything other than a 1080p card at this point. And even that's getting a little long in the tooth.
Let me send you this as well. This is benchmarking I did for the 9070 XT review that I just put out. It's Monster Hunter Worlds, and you can see that.
Jesus, yeah.
I know, it's so bad. You can see that the 4090 Supreme Liquid 24 GB in these settings in 4K with ray tracing on Monster Hunter Wilds, not World, Monster Hunter Wilds. You can see that it's like, I don't know, like 67 frames per second for the 4090. 9070 XT is like 56 frames per second. So yeah, look, the 4090 is only like 20% faster. But then the 4068 gigabyte benchmarked about the same as integrated graphics that were struggling to run the game, because 8 GB just isn't enough. And I should add this to this before Gerard shows people. I turned set textures to the lowest setting for this as well for the 4060,
Jesus.
and it was still almost tying integrated graphics. And that was a conclusion of my that I drew from the testing of the 9070 XT and re-benchmarking all of these cards with modern AAA games. My old roster of benchmarks included the Division 2, included games I still use like Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition, but then even Horizon Zero Dawn was getting a little old. And now using a roster of basically all AAA games, or games that I think represent modern gaming, I have to say that I know everyone's, including this channel, has been saying 8 GB been dead a long time. But at this point, I'm saying here that I cut for time for my review. Boy, 8 GB ain't enough. I know everyone has said it. I know we've said it, but I'm telling you guys, there's a scenarios where the 4060 is starting to feel like integrated graphics unless you just stick to 1080p low settings. It really is that bad.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this for, I guess, talking about 8 GB is becoming outdated for a couple years now. And a couple years ago, it's like you can't sell a premium card at 8 GB anymore. Now it is truly like 8 GB is becoming the obsolescent capacity of RAM. Like you really cannot have a card unless like you're just trying to chug along at 1080p. That is what 8 GB gives you at this point.
Exactly. And so I don't even think that it's mid-range like Nvidia wants you to believe it is. I don't even think it's low end. 8 GB is entry level. Like you have a backup RX 6400 so that you could still record podcasts with me, edit a couple things if you needed to, if your graphics card broke. That was entry level with 4 GB. Mm-hmm. Now it's 8. 8 GB is entry, not low end.
Yeah, and that's why, like with AMD, I think it's worth having an 8 GB card on your roster at this point, but it has to be the absolute low end of low end. So if like AMD, the lowest they have at this generation for desktop is like a 9060, then I don't think you should release an 8 GB card this generation. It's just stupid. Like, just keep producing old cards unless it becomes prohibitively expensive to do that. Then I guess maybe if you're willing to take more than the loss on just the value of the RAM itself and sell these like a 9060 8 GB at $230, then go for it, I guess.
Dead AI writes in and says, I think the best route for low yielding Navi 44 samples would probably be a 96-bit 12 GB 9060 or 9050, whatever they want to name it. Again, though, but that would require clamshell memory. And I disagree here. I disagree with this idea of how do we get to 12 gigabytes. It's like a Rube Goldberg trying to make something make sense when the answer is in front of you. Just give it 16. Like, to go from 12 to 16 gigabytes, I think would cost $10 to $20, and maybe closer to $10 because you don't need a clamshell, right? Or you still need a clamshell anyway, so you're already spending that money on that. So because that's 6 memory modules instead of to 8, not again, it's just completely idiotic. I think the answer is very simple. If they want, like we were just discussing, to release an 8 gigabyte variant, it should be the Drag yields, the very, very, very few of this 4 nanometers tiny chips that need to be disabled. It's probably like 10% of them or something. I don't know. And those should just be called the 9050, maybe not even 9050 XT, and they should be $200, and that should replace the 7600 or something. And then above that, any 9060 even should have 16 gigabytes for 300 or 250 or something. Like, I'm sorry. It doesn't make sense anymore. GDDR6 is at record low prices. Nvidia isn't even pulling from that supply anymore for most of their graphics cards that they manufacture. Just do it. It just does it. Like, let's stop screwing around. 16 gigabytes is mid-range. It's not even high end. No News writes in and says, has AMD discontinued Navi 33 production? Are there any plans to replace the 6600 at the $200 price point as well, assuming they ever sell through? Or is the $300 floor for new AMD discrete GPUs? So I don't know if they've stopped production. When I first saw this question while preparing the notes today, I thought I wouldn't be surprised if they did, because I believe they made a shit ton of ARC 7600 dies for laptop, because their plan was and I thought it was a cool plan. This was, remember, RDNA 3, which came out in 2022, was designed and finalized during shortages. So they thought, well, if we have the low end card be 6 nanometer and everyone's buying up 5 nanometer, we can then just spit out unlimited low end cards that will compete with the 4060 while being cheaper and having no supply constraints. But the supply constraints went away, and I think AMD made a ton of 7600s, and then it wouldn't surprise me if they stopped making them pretty quickly because they just knew they didn't need any more. Having said that, I asked a source today and I was told that there are no plans to end 7600 or 7600 XT supply. No plans to end of life those products. So I mean, either they have enough or they're still making it.
Yeah, and I hope they do. Like, apropos of what I said earlier, like, if this is what the 8 gigabyte card needs to be, I would just, or you want to put an 8 gigabyte card on the market still, just keep it being the 7600, and hell, maybe even the 6600 if it makes sense to keep manufacturing, or if you have enough of those dies left over. They seem to keep making new versions of the 6600, so who knows how long those will exist for.
Well, yeah, and again, so there's not any supply constraints on 6 nanometer right now, or minimal. And I think those costs have gone down. I think all AMD should do is keep making the 7600s, put them below $200, and then again, like, move the 7600 XT 16 gigabyte to 250. Don't even bother with 8 gigabyte anything Navi 44. Navi 44 is going to be like 30 or 40% faster. Or I think like 25 to 35% faster. So if you think about it, why cut down Navi 44 and give it 8 gigabytes? It probably costs less to just make a 6 nanometer card with 16 gigabytes. And assuming you bring FSR4 to that eventually, which we're about to get to, it probably is cheaper and would probably be the same as a cut down Navi 44 in performance anyways, because it actually has enough RAM.
And AMD, you can get back to your roots. You can overclock this by 10% and call it the 9050 XT. Come on.
Bring back Rebrandion. Better writes in, with Navi 44 on the Beater writes in, with Navi 44 on the horizon, thus concluding RDNA 4, at least as far as unique chips go. I think back a year and a half. Roughly a year and a half ago, give or take a month, we knew the big news about RDNA 4, and that was that there was not going to be a Navi 4C, some big chiplet variant, not, of course, TSMC's N4C node. We now sit at about a year and a half, give or take from that. from what do we hope from an RDNA 5 launch? Because we still don't have any info on it. What gives? Is this because of tariffs? No. AI woes. We're not blame everything on tariffs. AI woes software, or has Radeon just fixed their leaky ship in more ways than one? I think there's a lot to that they fixed their leaky ship. But my answer is simple. I did reach out to a source today. Hey, have you ever heard anything about RDNA 5? Answer was no. So I've had some sources at AMD mention it to me in passing many times. I brought this up in multiple leaks. But yeah, no, I haven't put any specs yet. And like you said, a year and a half ago, we didn't have all of the specs. I don't remember. I think I basically had full RDNA 4 specs quarter 1 or 2 of 24, so like a year before launch. And so my answer to you is I think this will launch late 26. My dude, ask me in 6 months. I don't think there's any room to be worried something's wrong with RDNA 5 right now when we are 2 years away from its launch effectively.
Yeah, or like maybe not 2, but we're probably like 19 months away from its launch or something like that. Like, we're fine. I mean, a year and a half sometimes, like based on my memory, stuff starts leaking out a little bit about preliminary stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember exactly when we started talking about RDNA 4 on this channel, I guess, but it would have been.
Oh, we're talking about it for a bit, but yeah.
I don't remember talking about full specs this time last year or this time 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, I like you said, in 6 months, I think there will probably be some news about what it might look like.
Yeah, I think probably. But again, if we think back, it's usually about a year before when we start to get, and like, even if you think about the fact that we knew Lovelace specs really early, and there was a leak, there's a hack. Nvidia was hacked. That's how we knew Lovelace specs so early. I mean, it wasn't because of anything normal. In RDNA 3, there was a lot of incorrect information, even some stuff that I got wrong on this channel, and we didn't really know full specs on that in my memory until half a year before launch. Same with Ampere. Big leaks had this channel about Ampere about half a year before launch. It's usually about half a year before we start to really know, and a year before maybe we know like one big detail.
Well, I'm trying to remember. Do you remember around when like the chiplet-based RDNA 4 thing was starting to get some discussion online? That could have been around this time a couple years ago, but I'm not remembering really.
August 15th, 2023 is when I confirmed it was canceled and had the schematics for it. I just looked it up. So
that's a good like you said, 6 months, I guess.
Ask me in 6 months, my dude. And then if we know literally nothing, then we can talk. But we're already starting to hear some things. Like, I know they're still dabbling with chiplets for them, I'll say that. And we know that AMD seems gung-ho with 2 nanometer, which is exciting. Although I wouldn't expect them to use that for the whole lineup. I'm pretty sure they'll use GDDR7, of course. And I think I was always told RDNA 5 is when AMD doubles down on ray tracing. Now, for the people that would say RDNA 4 had a huge ray tracing uplift, it did. But keep in mind, Blackwell went backwards. So I don't think AMD expected to almost tie Blackwell and ray tracing. NVIDIA's blundering allowed them to do that. All right. This piece of content is brought to you by Millionaire Match. Have you ever worried about running into scammers while trying to connect online? Unsure if the person you're talking to is even real? Every interaction can feel like a gamble, and the fear of having your privacy exposed or being deceived is always there. But with Millionaire Match, that's a thing of the past. Millionaire Match is a premium platform for successful, ambitious singles, not only for exclusive dating and meaningful matchmaking, but also for high-value business networking among like-minded professionals. It was founded in 2001 and has connected over 5 million high-quality individuals from around the world. In fact, Millionaire Match has been featured on CNN, ABC, CBS, and has earned recognition as one of the most trusted and reputable dating platforms in the world. It is honored as Best of the Web, too, by Forbes.com, and has been recognized by the Wall Street Journal for spotlighting millionaires. Millionaire Match does therefore stand out as a trusted dating platform for successful singles. Its key product features include a verified member community, and it has set a new standard, therefore, for safety and verification processes in the dating industry. You get awesome profile photo verification features as well, so that you know everyone interacted with you is 100% verified. Unlike other platforms, their service agreement strictly forbids the disclosure of any member's personal information for life, whether online, offline, or even in casual meetings. This is a premium experience for people looking to make premium connections. So, are you ready to meet millionaires and high achievers? Join Millionaire Match's community today and start your journey to find the perfect match. In fact, you can get a VIP bonus if you use referral code 9950, that's 9950, to unlock a special treat when you sign up at Millionaire Match through the link below. So support Moore's Law is Dead by checking out Millionaire Match through the link below today. Now let us move on then to story number 3. FSR4 confirmed to be in development for desktop and laptop RDNA 3. I'm just going to quote a source that I quoted in a video a week ago. This person who works at AMD, is someone that works at AMD, was hoping to have more updates for you. Person was talking to me about efforts to port FSR4 to RDNA 3, but unfortunately, the people I know working on it had nothing new to say last time I talked to them. The only thing I heard was we are taking our time to port FSR4 to RDNA 3 because we realize how important it is that we get this right. So, hey, at least that confirms they are doing it. And yeah, that's pretty much the gist of this story here. FSR4 is not ready for RDNA 3 yet. It is going to take some time, but at least we can definitely say that by the way it is being talked about behind the scenes, AMD is making FSR4 for RDNA 3, or at least it's in active development right now. And the sentiment of waiting until the technology is fully ready shows that Radeon's mentality has certainly changed from a few years ago for the better. Sure, delays suck, but as the 9070 series delayed launch showed, usually it pays to be late and ready more so than to bring out a broken mess faster, like they arguably did with RDNA 3.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much I have to add to this one. Like, I think getting their latest technology working to some degree on RDNA 3 is completely imperative to their current model or strategy, given how much of their stuff is still on RDNA 3. And if they weren't doing that, well, I hope we're getting to RDNA 4. But given how long they're going to be on RDNA 3 and 3.5, yeah, this needs to come at some point, and I hope it works as well as it can without the as much of the ML based stuff that they have for RDNA 4 based FSR 4.
Root Knight writes in, do you think AMD will be able to use their NPUs to boost FSR 4 performance on RDNA 3.5 APUs? Oh, I don't remember. I mean, theoretically, yeah, I think they could. I swear there were some like leaks or patents or about that as well. So will they do that? I don't know. That would actually make the NPUs do something. I'll say that.
I would love there to be a use of the NPU beyond not using Copilot, and I think like facial detection recognition is also used to some degree with the NPUs. So please,
blurring backgrounds on Zoom or something.
Oh,
like that.
Sure, that's also used.
Yeah.
Please give it a killer app. So if you can say we've got it working almost as well as RDNA 4 with this NPU, good job.
Yeah, but again, and I think, this is something me and you have talked about a lot. I think it's far more important that they get FSR4 working on RDNA 3 and 3.5. Obviously it's already public. They're porting it to the PS5 Pro. So they're going to make that work somehow. But the dedicated cards, it would be nice, but they are going to be putting RDNA 3 APUs out for the next 3 years. They already have since Phoenix. For that reason alone, they really, really, really need to get that going because, look, I don't know, XE Super Sampling 2 is supported in half a game or something pathetic. But if that were to change, that is a real problem, actually. The things that would benefit from this the most are APUs, where they have minimal amounts of performance and can really benefit from upscaling. So I just think from that point of view alone, they should do this. And it would be a big deal, too, to get this working on RDNA 3 as well. Just like a win for the fans, I think.
Oh, yeah. And just speaking from a business perspective, those APUs could be the biggest part of their market if they market them correctly. So, yeah, get this working on those APUs.
All right. Let us now continue this brisk pace that we are moving on with this episode to story number 4. Early Nvidia RTX 5080 and 5070 Super leaks emerge. So just again, quoting from a source that I quoted in a video a week ago, Weave, this person works at an AIB, had 24 gigabyte 5080 and 18 gigabyte 5070 configurations in the lab since 2024. Nvidia has been telling us to put those variants on hold, though, while they wait for high capacity GDDR7 to become cheap enough to be worth it for gamers. However, this week we were told that the Super Series is actually likely happening in 2025 and that we should get ready for it, that we should be prepared to finalize some highly overclocked variants of GB203 and 205 as the 5080 Super 24 gigabyte and the 5070 Super 18 gigabyte. I would estimate that the Super cards will be 7 to 15% faster than their non-Super brothers. And this is something I push back on, but apparently they think there actually is a lot of gas left in the tank to push clocks and power to get there, even though already the 5070 and 5080 use the full die, but they think you pushed another 10% or higher in core clocks, give it enough RAM. And yeah, I mean, I think maybe they could get there. We'll have to see, though. Additionally, pricing is still undetermined, but it sounds like they'll either keep the same prices. Right now, it should be $550 and $1,000 on paper. You can't get them for that much. Well,
Sure.
well, you can get the 5070 for less than that because no one wants it, but you can't get the 5080 for that much. RDNA 4 really has them spooked. So, yep, we at Moore's Laws had just received, in our opinion, the first somewhat tangible information. By tangible, I mean not just rumors or guesses by people on Chinese forum making fun of the press,
or mistranslations of those jokes on Chinese forums.
Not to say that they necessarily were this time, but they often have been. And at a minimum, I will say that you can see, like they're like, if you guys ready for the press to quote this and act like it's news, and like, and they still did even with that. Maybe they didn't read everything through Google Translate. Anyways, but that's why we take this to be a real thing for the first time here, worth covering, because someone at an AIB says they have been told by Nvidia that this is something that's going to happen. And I think it's very interesting that they've basically had several variants for a while in labs that they've done nothing with, that had higher clocks and more VRAM. And that's even where some of those leaks came out of an MSI 5080 24 gigabyte box. Like when we say that this thing's basically done, they had the marketing materials done and accidentally put them out online. And so now Nvidia is basically telling them that the top clocked versions, that's the final one. Prepare those, get ready to put a super sticker on those boxes, basically. But anyways, at the end of the day, both cards sound like a decent improvement, especially the 5070 Super, since the base variant is significantly hampered by only having 12 gigabytes. And some newer titles with heavier geometry and RT, we could see very impressive gains once the memory capacity bottleneck is lifted. However, we must remember that it all depends on supply. It is good that Nvidia is spooked by RDNA 4. Sure, the Supers sound good on paper. Like before, the Supers are the cards Nvidia should have launched in the first place, though. But ultimately, the main problem Nvidia has to solve is the supply of these cards. And in this case, perhaps we should be worried Nvidia is rushing the Super cards. Higher capacity modules are great, or even arguably necessary to make things like the 5070 even make sense. But could they create a new supply bottleneck? If so, wouldn't it be better to first start making enough GPUs that you've already supposedly launched in the first place, Nvidia? I do think that is one thing to worry about. But I don't know. Maybe there will be some mass production of the higher capacities that will make this not an issue.
I mean, I do hope at a certain point, well, I guess we'll see with those intermediate RAM capacities. Maybe that will just be what NVIDIA increasingly relies on over time. It does just seem like a lot of the time their cards aren't designed with a coherent capacity of RAM in mind ever. But I guess maybe those intermediate capacities will fix that. I mean, like you said, I think on paper the 5070 Super looks great, potentially, but I wish NVIDIA would just learn to release the Supers first without having to have the initial crappy card launch that we've been getting for, I don't know, a couple generations now. Like the 5070, if it had 18 gigabytes of RAM and was even a little more expensive than it is right now, okay, great. That just sounds like what you should have released a few months ago.
Yeah, by the way, I'm being distracted because someone just sent me an email saying that supposedly the 9060 XT and 8 and 16 gigabytes are already listed as in stock at some Australian retailer
Oh,
accidentally with pricing. Looking at the pricing itself, let's see. So AI is saying it's 10%. No, okay. I see something else saying 10%. So if we adjusted for this, yeah, I don't know what to make of this. It seems like a big price. I mean, because it like works out to then when you remove that like 550 or like that's clearly a price, a temporary price there. I don't think they launch it for the same price as the 9070.
yeah, that seems a little absurd.
So I guess I'll just leave this in here. Maybe put a little timestamp like emergency. Um,
If it turns out to be true by tomorrow or something.
$550 9060 XTs. I don't know.
Well, is that 550? Wait, do you mean 550
No,
Australian to
I
USD?
converted it.
Okay.
I've
okay.
already converted
I
it.
meant to ask that. Okay.
But
yeah, that
and
sounds
then remove
stupid.
the VAT. What I would take this to mean though is that yes, the 8 GB model is clearly launching if they're
Yeah.
accidentally listing 8 GB models. But did I derail something you were saying, or did you finish? I don't remember.
No, just mainly that the 18 gigabyte 50 70 sounds good on paper, and I wish that's what they would have released initially.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we keep coming back to this. I think with the dies that we have now, where you to not retcon new dies as well.
Yeah.
I think it really should have been 50, 80, 24 gigabytes, and they honestly should have been pushed. Like 5080 is apparently a pretty good overclocker. It should have been pushed hard enough to trade blows with the 4090. Have 24 gigabytes for $1,000. That would have almost a 4090, same amount of RAM, cheaper price. That would have gone over much better. The 5070 Ti, I don't know. I would honestly probably just call that the 5070 for like 649, and then the 5070 should be the 5060 Ti for 499, 449. I think drop the 3 GB module thing for just about everything but the 5080, and just stop lying to us that this is a 5070. This is a 2060 size. This is actually smaller than 2060. This is a 60 class die is what you're trying to tell us here.
In reality, what I've been saying is the 5070 should have been a 256-bit card, which that exists. Just make the 5070 Ti the 5070.
Dead Eyes 117 writes, it says, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the RTX 5000 series really doesn't seem to benefit from GDDR7 speeds. Do you think Nvidia would have been better off to stick with GDDR6 and use the cost saving to clamshell and double memory capacity on all of their cards? I think a 5060 16 gigabyte that's 5% slower or whatever would be much more appealing. Do you think they would have been too worried it would cut into AI sales having something like a 32 gigabyte 5080? I don't think the 5080 needs 32 gigabytes. I think 24 would be totally fine. Look, if we're getting into again like retconning here, I don't think we say they should have used GDDR6. I mean they should have used just GDDR6. I think they should have changed the bus configuration in general. GB205, what they used for the 5070, that should have been 256-bit. GDDR6 is dirt cheap now, and that would have been about the same amount of bandwidth while having enough RAM. The 5060 Ti or GB206 should have had 192-bit, 12 gigabytes for a cheaper price, and that's it. I still think the 5080 and 5090 dies should have GDDR7 so they can use higher capacities and sell those into AI. Or, I don't know, give gamers enough RAM with the 5080 24 gigabyte, maybe.
Dealer's choice.
If we're worth it for you, NVIDIA. But I think that, yes, it clearly seems like it was a mistake to me to use, again, not at the top tier dies. That makes sense for capacity reasons for AI alone. But yeah, I definitely think it should have been 256-bit GDDR6 that wouldn't have cost more money, I think, than going with 192-bit GDDR7. I think in hindsight, at least we can just say that's true.
Yeah, it seems like almost across the board with Blackwell, NVIDIA's gone for the least optimized strat possible.
Yeah.
Like, we'll use more expensive, higher bandwidth RAM that doesn't seem to benefit from for no reason. And it will, I get, or we could have just released this with GDDR6, more RAM, and at a higher bus width. It would have made up for that bandwidth issues anyways.
Yep, which we would have added, I don't know, 10 more millimeters square to the die size. Oh, well, you're saving money on other things, and the lineup isn't stupid. This is the decision AMD decided to make that NVIDIA did not. All right. Let us now then move on to story number 5. AMD Medusa and Gorgon point confirmed. Quoting here from Video Cards, AMD recently updated its technical information portal, adding new categories. Well, access to their resources within them is limited to only AMD personnel with the proper credentials to log in. The visible categories are there and confirm Moore's Law's dead leaks. Shimada Peak, Threadripper, 3 Gorgon points, which is analogous to Phoenix to Hawk Point, of course.
Oh, okay.
Gorgon Point is just, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it'll only be 1% better, but if they do all the same tweaks or do similar tweaks, I should say, going from Phoenix to Hawk Point, maybe Gorgon Point, which I believe is supposed to launch late this year, early next year, could, who knows, be 15% faster than Strix. And then also 2 Krakens were confirmed. So I guess there's a little Kraken. And Medusa 1. Only Medusa 1 was shown, but that does suggest this is a family of Zen 6 APUs. And so there you go. Yet again, after our information on Zen 6 using 2 nanometer was proven correct a fortnight ago, now the very reliable Twitter/Blue Sky user Instalab X, Carbon Cry adds a note. Is he a leaker or a data miner? Anyways, it depends what you want to class.
Still providing useful information either way.
Let's group them together. AMD listed new code names in their open source document database, including a Medusa family. Well, the documents themselves require a verified account. Of course, anyone can see them. And so now we do know that Gorgon Point is definitely happening. It is a refresh of Strix Point, and it is also good to see it is supposedly coming to AM5, by the way. Additionally, Shimada Peak, the Zen 5 Threadripper, is now also confirmed for TR5, which means they are not arbitrarily changing sockets as they did before. And of course, the most exciting part is confirmation of a Medusa family for a brand new FP10 socket. The use of a new socket supports our information, and it also supports what we've leaked so far about the size and chiplet nature of Zen 6 Medusa. All right, Dan, thoughts?
I mean, nice to see all of this confirmed. I think, right, we talked about the Medusa of it all a couple weeks ago. There are a lot of code names that I am still trying to wrap my head around.
You and half
Gorgon,
of the comments, people in the comments.
yes, because if my memory serves correct, Medusa 1 seems like it's possibly 2 different dies, correct? Or is that Medusa 2?
I think I have this handy here. So I have documents literally naming them the Medusa numbers. So Medusa 1 is supposedly Big Medusa, which has 2 variants, a monolithic, a chiplet one that uses a 12-core chiplet, plus the 2 little cores on an IO die with graphics. And then there's a monolithic variant that has 4 Zen 6, 8 Zen 6C, kind of similar to Strix on, and then there's I think that's on 3 nanometer. And then there's Medusa Point Little. So that's the second one. That's like 2 or 4. It's like 6 cores or something, right. And like less graphics. And then there's Medusa 3, which has its own code name, also called Bumblebee, which is the like very, very little one, like 2 to 4 compute units, and like 2 Zen 6, it says here in my notes, 2 Zen 6C, 2 Zen 6 low power. So technically 6 cores, but really going 6. As little as you can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. It's good to see confirmation that Medusa and the Medusa family exists, but I think most of my thoughts are still there. It seems like the Medusa family has a little bit of it could cannibalize itself a bit. So I guess what that probably means is not all of them will come out.
I don't think so. No. I think the monolithic Medusa 1 seems odd if they would also have a triplet version. I feel like you would do chiplet, full power Medusa 1, and then you'd have little Medusa, and then Bumblebee would be over here on, I think, N4 and 3C, like the cheap 3 nanometer variant would come out much later to basically replace Mendocino.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unless there was some other yet to be confirmed die that would replace the non-monolithic Medusa, but that's just rampant speculation by me.
Yeah.
So,
all right, let's see here. Quick Jumper writes in, says, "Hi, Tom and Dan. I've noticed that AMD's Kraken Point and Strix processors have become incredibly widespread in laptops recently. There's now a wide range of AMD-powered laptops available with impressive builds and dedicated GPUs. Well, they tend to be a bit pricier. I think they're really hitting the sweet spot for most laptop users. What do you think about their performance in real-world tasks and power efficiency compared to Intel alternatives? And are there any standout features in the latest AMD laptops that you find compelling?" This sounds catty, but it's that they work. Like what AMD
Eh,
has going for them with Strix Point specifically, I feel, is only, and I guess Halo, is only AMD gives you APUs that will boot every game, can run AAA games, at least at reasonable settings. I know it might be sometimes 720p high, but that might be at 60 frames per second. In my testing, every AAA game can be played at least in 720p 60 with good settings, usually 1080p medium or something on Strix Point. That is, I know it's not high end, but good enough settings where you're doing better than a Series S, that's for sure. Quite a bit better.
mhm.
And plenty of people think that's enough. You know, only AMD gives you that performance in an APU, and you know it will boot every game and not do stupid stuff like drain your battery overnight in your laptop. Like Intel still seems to have a huge problem with. So I would say that's really the biggest feature there. The only thing I would add is like about Kraken is Josh, the last guest on Broken Silicon, seemed to really not like Kraken, but it's funny. Most of that centered around the fact that he was like, and because we always look at this, Dan, from a macro level, long term, pure
Yeah.
technology, what have they managed to accomplish angle, I feel. And he is just like, I don't know, this Kraken laptop has slightly higher single threading than Hawkpoint, slightly worse multi-threading, and its graphics are a little weaker. I don't get the point of this thing. I guess it has a much better AI engine. And I said to him, well, wait a second, what are the costs of Kraken laptops? And he's like, $800. And I'm like, oh, well, you have to understand Kraken has a die size that I believe is a little smaller than Hawkpoint. So the point is this should be in $600, $500 laptops and replace Hawkpoint. It's not supposed to be an upgrade from Hawkpoint, but because it's new right now, it's not really worth
It's
getting.
inflated or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not paired with a discrete graphics card, this could be an entry level laptop chip for like $600, and or paired with a discrete card
Certainly.
could be a fine, like, I don't know, 900p 1080p gaming, super entry level
like,
gaming
paired
card.
with a decent dedicated card. I think you could make a $800 gaming laptop. Like you could.
Yeah, but I would imagine that would mostly be paired with, I guess I don't know what's generally being sold right now. Are they still selling 3050s, or is that
Yeah,
like
but
a
it'd probably get
4050 now these days?
4060s are sub 1000 now. You'd get a
Okay.
4060.
Oh, so yeah, that paired with a 4060, I think sounds like a decent gaming laptop for
As long
that
as
price.
it's not anymore, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I guess that's what I would say. I think Strix is everywhere and it's great. I've tested it extensively. Very impressed. It was the snappiest system I think I've ever used was a Strix monolithic Strix mini PC. And I was impressed that it really was quite a bit better than Hawkpoint, I will say. Kraken, I have nothing to say. It's meant to be budget Hawkpoint with modern features. And unless it's the same price as Hawkpoint or arguably less, no, I don't think it makes any point in getting that over Hawkpoint, especially if Hawkpoint came with like a dedicated card or something versus that, because you could just use NVIDIA's graphics to do whatever you want with AI anyway. It's probably better than an NPU.
True.
All right. Let us now move on to story number 6. Intel Q1 2025 earnings, job cuts, and AI failures. From Intel CEO Lip-Bu Tan, quoted here, I believe, during an earnings call. The first quarter was a step in the right direction for the company, but there are no quick fixes as we work to get back on a path to gaining market share and driving sustainable growth, said Lip-Bu Tan, Intel CEO. He said, I am taking swift actions to drive better execution and operational efficiency while empowering our engineers to create great products. Then from Intel head of product, Michelle Halthus, Meteor Lake and Lunar Lake are great as well, but come with a much higher cost structure, not only for us, but at the system price points for our OEMs as well. And so as you think about an OEM perspective, they've also, written those cost curves down from Raptor Lake, and it allows them to offer that product at a better price point. So anyways, yep. Once again, Intel presented their weakest numbers yet. Particularly, their client products continue to slump, with gross margin dropping to a mere 39.2%. But the data center CPUs see a return above 10% margin after a year. Ooh, above 10%, rising all the way to 13.9%. Otherwise, the numbers tell similar stories to Intel's 2024 financials. And Intel expects things to get even worse next quarter, with gross margin dropping to just 36.5% in their outlook. So Look, let's be fair. Righting the ship will take time, even as the new CEO promises swift action. We do see positive signs, though, like continual job cuts. I know that sounds harsh, but Intel's probably been 30% bigger than they should have been for a long time. For the company, these are a positive, as Intel had grown far too large. However, we must drill in on one of the very problematic causes for Intel's issues this quarter, especially in client, and that is that Raptor Lake seems to remain Intel's top seller even in laptop. Remember, Raptor Lake was replaced in laptop by Meteor Lake, then Lunar Lake, then Arrow Lake, and yet it is still the top seller. And because it's so old, that explains the lower revenue and especially the lower margin, as these are old discounted products on a frankly inflatedly expensive node, 10 nanometer. Old CPUs seldom sell at a premium, much less in their original MSRPs. And so it must be emphasized, though, I believe why this is happening, because I don't just believe it's because they're cheaper. I believe it's not just higher pricing of AI. I believe the thing that is a bigger issue for Intel and that is being proven in their earnings is that nobody wants AI. Think about it. With AMD Strix, I know AMD paints AI all over their Strix products, but it does come with 12 cores, 50% more cores than Hawkpoint, better graphics than Intel or Hawkpoint. And even if AI is plastered all over it, it's still a vastly better upgrade than their previous chips and then everything Intel's selling pretty much. However, if you think about Meteor Lake was literally Raptor Lake performance. In some scenarios, the same efficiency as Raptor Lake, just with a shitty NPU. Lunar Lake doesn't have the specs people want either. It has only 4 big cores. That's not enough for a premium product. So what I read into this personally is something that I've been told by my own sources as well, and also that Josh from the previous episode was told by his sources. Nobody goes into Best Buy and asks for AI in their laptop, meaning no AI boom has happened. Strix is selling well, not because an AI boom. It's because it gives you 12 big cores and 1080p gaming in an APU with good laptops that it's paired with. Is nothing to do with AI. Meteor Lake, only selling point is AI, not selling. And so I think that's what I would say here is like this thing that Intel bet the farm on, AI PCs, is not increasing sales at all, which is crazy to me. Although I'm not ultimately unexpected. So I don't know. Hopefully Panther Lake, which they teased yet again, will do well. Although again, Intel also confirmed that it's basically a 2026 product.
Yeah, I mean, and then that, and I don't know, just laying all of their products after it. Like in a lot of ways, on paper, nothing they've made since Raptor Lake looks that much better. I mean, I guess Arrow Lake has reined in efficiency a ton, or the efficiency issue that Raptor Lake had a ton, but at the cost of hyper-threading. And I don't know, maybe a lot of people don't find that a compelling product without hyper-threading, given that that's been the norm for what now? 15 years almost?
Well, and let me say this. I know that you can say the little cores for Lunar Lake are like supposedly kind of as good as Raptor Lake cores once you remove hyper-threading. So not really as good as Raptor Lake core. But it's just such a marketing loser. Someone goes into Best Buy and they're like, this is Lunar Lake. And they're like, how many cores does it have? 8. And they're like, oh, wow, this is an 8-core processor. And they go, well, 4 of them are big cores. Boom. The person goes, oh, I don't want only 4 real cores. Even if the not real cores are actually as good as a lot of the other cores Intel are selling, it's a marketing failure. And again, I think AMD's approach of just, no, we're going to make big cores clock lower, but still be the same performance is way better for marketing, because you can say they are just 12 big cores because they are.
Yeah, and it's going to sell much better because that's, I mean, basically they can just market them as these are the lower clocking cores, which is how
they were already
boost clocks
doing it
have worked for years. Yeah, that's how boost clocks have worked for forever anyways.
Yeah. So I don't know. Again, yeah, look, there's tons of layoffs that have been announced at Intel. Record bad earnings again. It's not really the news for me here. It's except that
was expected.
Yeah, except that Liputan's actually doing the cuts that I think they should have been doing for years. The big takeaway for me is that no one will pay a premium. We've already learned they won't pay a premium for more E-cores, right? We've already seen the Amazon bestsellers. It's the big core models that people want, the ones that maximize how many big cores you get per dollar from Intel. And now we're also learning another thing Intel bet on, not just E-cores, but AI. People will buy a new APU if it's better than the other one. Better meaning faster graphics, more efficiency, or better efficiency, I should say, and more cores and faster cores. They're not going to pay for more for Meteor Lake, which is no better than Raptor Lake besides having a crappy AI engine. There's no price premium put on AI engines, and it's because no apps use them.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've been talking about NPUs forever. It still seems like they're not really offering any value, despite the fact that 2 years ago, NPUs were all the rage, or the future of NPUs were all the rage. I mean, well, we need to start actually using them if people want to find this at all convincing beyond, I don't know, AMD's SEO strategy of putting AI in everything.
Yeah, and I know that's a funny thing. It's a theory I have. I do think it's SEO. I think they're putting AI in Pro and Max Apple terms. So if you search for this, AMD may pop up below Apple in your Google search. I genuinely think that's
Or above Apple based on how ruined Google search is at this point.
Sure, maybe you'll just pull up something entirely unrelated because AI is useless, or at least Google's is. Are you too depressed to go outside because of how expensive Microsoft software is? Well, there's absolutely no need for that. Just go to cdkeyoffer.com. That's right, this piece of content is once again sponsored by cdkeyoffer.com. And I say once again because they've been a fantastic sponsor of Moore's Law is Dead and its community for many years. And that's because they always deliver the best pricing reliably for Microsoft products like Windows operating systems, Office software, and they also sell games and other things as well. So make sure you check them out, especially during their Easter sale going on right now. And if you do, use offer code BrokenSilicon to save 25% on all Microsoft software, and then Die Shrink to save 3% off on everything else on the website. The community uses them. I use them for my new Zen 4 X3D desktop. And Jesse here needs to stop moping around, and I think use them as well. So that's once again, support Moore's Law is Dead by going to cdkeyoffer.com through the links below today. It's okay, Jesse. It's okay. Carbon Crime writes, and it says, Tom, with Raptor Lake remaining Intel's main client products, can we have an update on the instability story? Yes, you can. I reached out to a source before recording, and I believe returns are still higher than AMD, but they are a fifth of what they were a year or two ago. So yes, maybe Intel has significantly mitigated the Raptor Lake failure issue for now. The only thing I would say is remember that comes with notably lower performance. So it's like they fixed the issue. They are just now entirely uncompetitive with AMD when it comes to both efficiency and performance with Raptor Lake.
So it's a win-win for them.
It is it's outstanding innovation, as Pat would say. Sheriff Lotfi writes in, says, hello, Tom and Dan. I heard a rumor about Intel foundries wanting to make Nvidia GPUs. Well, first of all, you don't even need a source to know they want to make things. They're under capacity. Yes, they want to. They wanted to make Xboxes as well. By the way, Sheriff, I believe this channel put out a leak 3 years ago that Nvidia has already talked to Intel about making graphics cards on their foundries, but this really isn't new. These rumors pop up every 6 months. He says, though, do you think that would be a good idea for Nvidia to do so? And would it be beneficial for gamers, or would they not be well made or functional? No, I think that they could make GPUs on them. Although I guess it is pretty damning. Intel still has yet to make a single GPU, dedicated one at least. On their own
that's
nodes.
Not great.
Send a good
that's
signal.
not great marketing.
But look, if it allows Nvidia to actually sell a ship, because they can produce enough 60 class GPUs because they're using different capacity than what the cutting edge nodes use at TSMC, and they actually have enough RAM, by the way. Sure, why not? I wonder what you think about this, though. I think maybe Intel is weak enough where Nvidia can just start using their nodes without worrying about them catching up for a decade.
Oh,
because that was a big thing stopping them from going to them. Number one, they don't want to have a worse relationship with TSMC, and they would if they started going to Intel for some of their products. But number two, also, there's a real fear. Everyone I've talked to at AMD and Nvidia, that if you make something on an Intel node, they will steal some of your ideas for their next products.
I mean, that just sounds like a big lawsuit for Intel if they did that, and I don't think they would want that to be exposed to that right now. But I don't know. Intel does have a history of screwing over their partners, I suppose.
Exactly.
AMD can't speak to that at all.
And I don't remember what guest this was, but this was a very long time ago that I made this point. Maybe it was like in 2019 or something after I put out that link. I believe that was like 4 years ago. But like, if you're even 10% worried that Intel could learn about what you're working on early and then tell their other teams, like think about that, like presenting a roadmap to Intel foundries. We're making RTX 6000 and then 7000. And then they go, by the way, ooh, if we actually did make Celestial and rush it out early, we can beat RTX, whatever, to the market. That is something you'd worry about if you're Nvidia. Even if there's a 10% chance that might happen, and it's just 10%, how much cheaper is Intel than TSMC really? That's worth that risk. That is what I'm saying. It's not like Intel's over here on 1 nanometer charging half the price of TSMC. Were that to happen, they would already be using Intel. But like, what's this? If you're, aren't things going well at TSMC? Why shake the boat? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, shake the boat or rock the boat if they're offering if they're offering dirt cheap pricing, I suppose. Which at a certain point,
how much
they're going
cheaper
to have
can it
to.
really be? I mean, they're using the same. They're getting the same crap from the Netherlands to make the same stuff for some of this.
Yeah, I mean, Intel can't be a charity, so true.
And so that's what I would say. Is like, I think if Intel's weak enough and Nvidia feels comfortable that especially if Intel Foundries truly like kind of becomes its own company, sure, I would use them.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think there's a little bit of apprehension there, and maybe it's time to go to them, though. I don't see Intel catching up to Nvidia graphics anytime soon. Although, Nvidia is catching up to Intel and how horrible their drivers are. I'll say that.
Well, that's the main race you want to be winning is horrible drivers.
They've truly beaten Intel in everything: performance, time to market, technology, design, and how bad your drivers can get.
But have they beaten them in PowerPoints? Or
As Nvidia,
is Intel still the market leader?
Intel still has the most PowerPoints for products you can't buy. All right. Let us now move on here to the final story. Number 7, tariff update, early May edition. So I'm going to quote 2 things from Reuters and then move on to the editorialization. First, the U.S. economy contracted for the first time in 3 years in the first quarter, swamped by a flood of imports as businesses race to avoid higher costs from tariffs, and underscoring the disruptive nature of President Trump's always chaotic trade policy. Another thing here from Reuters: with the end of a U.S. tariff exemption for small parcels on Friday, this is from like a week ago, some retailers have stopped selling to customers in the United States, while others are seeking temporary workarounds in the hope that tariffs rates may be reduced. British beauty products retailer Space NK has paused e-commerce orders and shipped to the United States to avoid incorrect or additional costs being applied to our customers' orders. The company said in a notice on Wednesday it is not alone. Understands, a Vancouver-based company that sells bras and underwear manufactured in China, told customers in an Instagram post that would no longer ship to the U.S. due to the tariffs. Said we are going from 0 to 145%, which is really untenable for companies and untenable for customers, said Cindy Allen, CEO of the Trade Force Multiplier, a global trade consultancy. I've seen a lot of small and medium-sized businesses just choose to exit the United States market altogether. And so there you go. On to the by now usual tariff update that we seem to feel we need to do at the end of every news episode. The biggest factor affecting gaming hardware in 2025. Just in case of more changes, just in case something changes, Carmen Christ said, make sure you tell them. We are recording at 7:26 p.m. U.S. Central Time on the May 4th. May the 4th be with you, everybody. But every week and every day, we see the effects we predicted. Increases in prices. Last time it was Switch 2 delays and major companies like Asus and Lenovo and Audi leaving the U.S. market. And now it is the Xbox Series X that was just in the news. It's having price increases due to tariffs. Removal of goods from U.S. markets, and especially with small, medium-sized businesses, is stopping sales to the U.S. But let's focus on that. The small and medium-sized businesses. These are meant to be the darlings of the U.S. economy, the plucky little engines, the dream to found a business, to succeed, to do well through your own hard work with a company you yourself own. Few people start Walmarts, but thousands can start small stores, a bodega, or today, maybe a specialized niche ESOP. These are the first to be hurt and hurt most by tariffs. Walmart has reserves. They have the size and the power to weather tariffs. A small independent shop, though, has no reserves to bridge the uncertain period. Amazon can just stop selling items, refocus on others, buffer turbulent changes and tariff rate with stock already imported. A small eShop can't. And right now, this is what we are seeing. Everyone is hurting, but small, medium-sized businesses are now already starting to go out of business. These are lives destroyed, whole segments of the economy abandoned to bigger companies, consolidating power that will lead to more monopolies and higher prices for consumers in the future. Yeah, I mean, I'll just skip ahead and say that is kind of killing the American dream right there.
Yeah.
And, you know, I will say this isn't financial advice, but when I look at like my IRA, I'm pivoting away from small cap stocks. I don't have any individual stocks, just indices, because it's like, well, the small caps are getting destroyed. I mean, I personally know people that have had small businesses had to close, and it's just, yeah, this is continuing, but it is both because now the Xbox is more expensive, which is, I think, what everyone was hoping we would have happen this year.
Well, slightly more expensive Xbox, or more expensive Xbox, small businesses going out of business or just having trouble importing the products they need to sell. So maybe they'll have trouble existing for the next couple of years. But at least, I don't know, in theory, slightly lower tax rates. We did it.
But that hasn't happened yet. So far, no.
But that has not happened or materialized, and I think the continued existence of your business is more important
than
and
5%
actually being
lower
able to sell
taxes.
products is the most important thing. But what do I know?
Yeah, Dan, nerd. Yeah, but so I guess, and what I would say too is how this relates to, which it already did relate. You know, we already brought up Xbox raising prices. You know, we did a die shrink recently. I think it was in a die shrink. Someone asked, do you think the PS5's price might go up in the US? Yes. I just think Sony has much greater reserves because they plan to head intelligently for the tariffs. But yes, I think you should expect that. So if you want a PS5 or Pro, get it now. And I would say I talk about this, I believe, with you as well. And a die shrink, actually, it's a die shrink we just put out about GPU shortage shopping advice. A major component of that is like these tariff pauses. And then now we're seeing a surge of slightly cheaper, 9070 XTs and 9070s arriving. I got one, I'm using it right now to record this podcast. That might be a narrow window where they've just all been rushed in with a tariff pause. Again, I think you should get it now if you see like a 750 or less 9070 XT, because I don't know that they always will be that price for the rest of this year. And we've seen this with 5060 Ti availability being excellent in Europe and non-existent in the US a lot of the time. That is because they are choosing to not sell to the US. And so if tariffs go on again, and I think some of them will, by the way, that's just my opinion, I do think some of them will go on again, you're going to see more chaos, and you're going to see companies not have to make do. No, they don't. The US is like what, 25, 30 something, like 25 to 50% of the depends on what
market.
Yeah, consumer market part of the market you're talking about. It is not 100%. It is not 80%. And once you get into that percent, they'll just skip the market for a few years. So
yeah,
like that is what people need to be warned about. If you need something, get it now. That is still true.
And just going forward, like, because I don't know if this chaos of them stopping and starting and renegotiating or readjusting tariffs constantly, there seemingly for a couple days it seemed like we didn't even know what the tariff on China was on goods. Like, just seemed like for
which
a while
is why they're
like,
not bothering.
it might be 145, might be 185%. We don't know because these tariffs are being enacted through tweet seemingly.
Well, and again, so that's the thing. That's why they're going to skip the U.S. market to everybody. It's not just because the U.S. isn't the entire world, which is true. It's also because they're so confusing, it's not worth doing the math.
Yeah, and during brief moments of clarity, that might be when things get shipped into the U.S. And I would assume there's somewhat of a delayed fuse, but you get then for a couple weeks or maybe even just a couple days when products are reasonably available. So I would just guess going forward, we'll see more fits and starts of product availability. Pretty much everywhere, but here too.
But yeah, so I guess that's really the final summary of like how it directly affects PC gaming on this one. Xbox is more expensive. Do expect the PlayStation to get more expensive in the US. Maybe not right away. I think they stockpiled a lot of them, and expect this to continue. Like there will be 1 week where something that had doubled in price is now half the price. Get it then, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let us now move on to the wrap up here with the first one being a fun one, I think. Nvidia dismisses Anthropic's report of ludicrous GPU and CPU smuggling methods. Let me see. So there's been all these rumors coming out that like Nvidia chips were hid in Lobster boxes and stuff, and I don't know, Nvidia's uh saying this isn't true. So I don't know what is true. I just thought this story was funny and interesting. And I will say that my experience, especially talking to some people in the industry have some experience with working with third parties, even in gray markets, and how they get exports into different markets, is a lot of these
Mhm.
AI chips are just getting into China, and they just are. And like these embargoes, I don't know that they really did a whole lot.
No, I mean, it seems like what Singapore is a big port to get them into China,
Everyone
right?
in Singapore needs three
Often.
4090s, damn.
I mean, Tom,
They're big gamers, a Fortnite boom.
S- SLI is very popular in
That's right,
Singapore.
but nowhere else. Um, Minis Forum, I think this is cool, impresses with what looks like a very traditional enthusiast variant of a micro ATX motherboard. And it's cool it's micro ATX because no one makes good micro ATX AMD motherboards anymore. And they have one here. You know, me and you, Dan, are both using Minis Forum motherboards, but they're ITX ones. I wouldn't say bare bones in some ways, high end in other ways. This one looks like it's
Sure.
going for the full IO, and all you need to know is it just has built in an AMD Zen 5, I think it's 9955HX processor. And so that is the equivalent of a 9950X. And this is a motherboard to watch, because if this thing hits the market at $500, you're getting a $600 CPU, a $300 motherboard, and it's, you know, again, it's like you're getting the motherboard for free. It's crazy.
Yeah, I guess we'll see what it ends up getting sold for. But yeah, if this, which I don't know why it wouldn't, once I should say once it makes its way into the international market or U.S. market, yeah, I think this is going to be one of the ones to buy.
Also, I don't know how much I have to say about this, but it seems clear that the Department of Justice is going to break up Google's advertising tech monopoly. And I will, the only thing I want to say about it is that is a very, very good thing, because I have watched
Mhm.
ad revenue on so many platforms hit our pocketbooks. And like, I'm just so everybody knows, like when the channel first started, we would get, not first started, but like in 2020, when we were really starting to get into a
Mhm.
heyday, I'd say our first heyday with the Ampere coverage and stuff, I'd say we would get 700 to 1,000 to 1.4 million views a month. Now we get 1.4 to 2 million views a month. So double the views that we used to get. And we have like a fourth the ad revenue. Like, and how does this happen? It's because Google controls this market, and they can negotiate lower and lower and lower prices. Were there to be, like, we're just now signing up with a podcast network. We'll see how this goes. It would be conceivable that the RSS feed, which still does well for a podcast, but gets maybe a tenth the views of the YouTube version, or sometimes more, but yeah, like a fraction, shall we say, of the YouTube
Mhm.
version, might make the same ad revenue. And how is that
I mean, yeah,
possible?
that's
And just
crazy.
programmatic ads. I'm not even talking about the integrated ones. Just the ones that are like put in at the beginning and end, you know, that you hear like on like the YouTube ad like ones you hear on podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe per ad buyer or whatever that is on an RSS feed, or I shouldn't say that, per listener on an RSS feed, maybe that's generates more value for an advertiser than a YouTube feed. But this is theoretically the same content, so you'd think it would be a lot closer. And then you have YouTube having the various adpocalypses, which seems like an excuse for advertisers to just break out. Yeah, I mean, I think Google clearly controls too many levels of the current internet monetization hierarchy.
Yeah, and again, the one of the biggest things that would also be good for the stock market, if anyone cares about that, uh, is to break up the tech giants. Do you know how good Instagram would do if it wasn't controlled by Meta? Would you
Mm.
rather hold stock in Meta and Instagram, or just Facebook strangling Instagram so that it can't kill Facebook? Oh, I can tell you which one would make you more money in investments. And so this has never happened before, I believe, in history, where breaking up a mega company into four didn't in total make 4 companies that have more wealth competing with each other. So
Yeah.
we should want these breakups to happen, and I'm really hoping for the Google one because I know it'll benefit us. All right, let us move on. Okay, so now this is a little misleading. A lot of people said, and even I thought it was this, that Titanfall 3 was canceled. I believe it was technically maybe just a Titanfall universe game, but
Okay.
a lot of layoffs have hit Electronics Arts, and it's sad to see it hit this team because I think Titanfall 2's campaign is one of the best campaigns I've ever played in a shooter.
Yeah, and I guess we'll see why or how it shakes out, but Respawn seems to be one of the big workhorses for EA right now. So seeing them have a bunch of layoffs is pretty sad. Like, because they have that, they have Titanfall, they have what is it, Apex Legends, which I know has been pretty successful. They have the Jedi series, which by my understanding has been pretty successful. So seeing that company or studio take a huge hit is sad, although I guess their sports franchises probably make more money.
Yeah, and consistently, I
guess
suppose.
I guess that's the EA model.
Also, there have been a lot of rumors coming out that there is a Half-Life 3 coming, or some new Half-Life game. I can't say I've done a ton of research on it. Have you, Dan?
No, not really, but I want another Half-Life if Valve ever learns how to count to 3.
But will it just be Half-Life Alyx 2? Come on.
Could
just
be.
Another. They ended episode 2 of Half-Life 2, so really the third Half-Life 2 at a huge cliffhanger. I mean, come on, guys.
Yeah, at this point, it's just a meme. So even if as they develop the Half-Life series, like in perpetuity, I would think they'll just make sure to never get to 3.
I mean, it'd be hilarious if they just called it 4.
Sure. That'd be fun.
Let's see. Also, in a surprise to nobody, GTA 6 was delayed to May 26th. And I'm sure now a bunch of games will have their release dates suddenly announced, like Borderlands. Wasn't that a rumor a month ago? Is that Borderlands 4 all of a sudden had its release date announced? And a lot of people were like, do they know GTA 6 is about to be delayed? And it seems like they may have. Like, they knew someone at Rockstar. They're like, it's definitely getting delayed. They're like, ooh, we got to get out there and announce it.
That's a conspiracy theory that makes a bit of sense to me.
I mean, not all conspiracy theories are just, conspiracies. A theory that someone knows someone at another game studio and they learn this is definitely getting delayed. And then they're like, ooh, let's be the first to announce we have a fall release or something.
Yeah, and I guess just sad me wanting GTA 6 shouldn't be surprised because Rockstar loves announcing a release date for their games and then delaying it 6 months. It's kind of their thing.
Me and you were talking about this the other day, though. It is kind of crazy this happened this time. I mean, what's it been? Was it 2013, right? When the other one came out, I want to say. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I said 22. You had 12 years. You could have announced it whenever. Why announce it before you know it's ready? It just seems silly to me. Like, I think Fallout 3 was one of those famous ones where like they announced it at E3 and then it came out that fall. I feel like they should have done that.
I think to put it into like terms of a human lifetime, the average GTA Online player was in diapers when GTA 5 came out.
That was so silly too, because I remember, wasn't that like a month or two, like 3 months before the PS4 launched, and you could only get it on PS3, which ran like crap because the PS3 was way too old. Mm-hmm. Or Xbox 360, I believe. Whatever. It wasn't on PC, and it wasn't on the Xbox One or PS4, and that was very silly.
And had 5-minute load times.
Yeah, that was the worst part. My God. Anyways, Carbon Cry writes in, GTA 6 should cost $200. Base game only. Hear me out. I'm not suggesting that Evil Games Corp squeeze poor gamers. Or he said, let me rephrase it. He says, am I really suggesting Evil Games Corp squeeze poor gamers? Yes, because it is what games and gamers need. Today, a game only needs to have the base quality and mass appeal to be worth $60 for enough people to be profitable. This benefits mass market, highly appealing games and stifles creativity. If $200 is the bar for the game that everyone has to buy every generation, I think we would see high budget games aiming at a narrower niche of gamers. In the end, we get more varied games and more games focused on quality rather than constant high budget mass market appeal and mid titles. In the lower budget niche games we get today will be able to charge more, increase their budget, and improve quality. So look, Carbon Cry, I'm not going to say I agree that it should be $200. I will say there should be more tiers of game costs, because it's just like ridiculous that every game tries to be 70 or like $40.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Like a tier, especially if it gets rid of like the which a lot of games have moved away from this model anyways, like the model where they have 4 DLCs for $15 to like sneakily make the price of the game $120 anyways. You just said this game is $120. We think it has enough content to justify it, and it does. I think people would buy it, and if they like promise there won't be any bullshit DLCs that make this cost end up going to $180.
Well, think of GTA Online too, that of course came with GTA 5. I mean, it didn't work for like the first few months it was out, and it came out months after the game launched. But think of, because we played it recently, GTA 5, but on the PlayStation 5 version where you get like the $10 upgrade. And I have to say, the amount of content that's in GTA Online right now compared to when it came out over a decade ago is comical. I think they could say, yeah, and like, look, there's going to be DLC, but we're going to add probably 2-3 DLCs worth of content for free over the course of it too. And that's why we're charging this much. I don't think that's crazy. I think the craziest games though, that shouldn't be afraid to aim for 99. I don't think higher would go well, but like, I don't know, like Fallout 5, GTA 6. I don't know about The Last of Us Part 3, but like The Last of Us Part 2, I've played so much because of No Return, and the original game was like 60 hours long. These are games that should cost quite a bit more than your typical, like, whatever, 20-hour game. They really should.
Yeah. And I will say, though, with GTA 5 or 6, I mean, the first game to try to push a $200 market, cost because they want to, like, target a niche. I don't think that's the big game to push that idea for, because GTA 6 might sell like 180 million copies.
You might want some degree of mass market here.
Yeah, because sure, massive budget game. I think it could. I just looked it up. GTA 5 has sold 210 million copies. To think that it will get most of the way there wouldn't shock me, like, or wouldn't surprise me at all. Like, if it doesn't, I think it'll be viewed as a failure by Rockstar.
But no, I don't think Mario Kart World should be $80. You asked me, that's a $60-$50 game there. I'm sorry, it is. But on that note, let me ask you, Dan. All right, gun is up to your head. Will GTA 6 be $80?
I don't think so, but I guess shoot me in, what is it, May, if I'm wrong.
Shooting you in 12 months. God, it's a year away still. Yeah. Would it surprise you if it was?
No, I guess not. No,
I wonder, because Nintendo's already announcing this. I wonder.
True. Maybe it'll be normalized in a year.
Crypto AI Tech Bro Scam writes in.
Oh no.
And says, why hasn't there been an 8-core version of Strix Halo with a full GPU unlocked and 64 gigabytes of RAM? That would be the perfect gaming APU. So my answer is twofold. Number one, you focus on high margin and premium first. It's something we've talked about a lot with Halo, and that's creators and AI. So they're going to want 16 cores, and those are going to go into the more expensive laptops. And then the second point, as long as you can keep charging more for a new product, you're going to. So there's no pressure yet for AMD to dump any of their worse yields or segment Strix Halo into budget segments. Think about it, right? If you can sell the 40 compute unit model with one chiplet for, I don't know what it would be, $1,500, $1,800, why not add one more 69, or I think it's a little bigger than that now, like 70 something millimeter square chiplet, to be able to say it's a 16 core laptop for 2,500. Like, they're going to do that as long as they can until they can't sell any more of those. And then that is where I think they would actually go to 8 cores and 32 compute unit yields with slower memory, cheaper, but maybe 64 or 48 gigabytes would probably be perfect, actually, I would say. for a $1,500 future-proof gaming laptop. But I don't think they're going to do that with Strix Halo. Again, I think it would be 8-core 32 compute units, not the most expensive memory. I don't think they would do that until you see that they've saturated being able to sell that for much, much, much more with more cores.
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, that extra 70 millimeters of silicon doesn't suddenly, I don't know, turn a $2,000 or the price you're could get for that laptop would be so much less, and for really not that much less material.
Yeah, it's like you're going to do that as long as you can.
Yeah.
Chris Rich, which unless you're AMD, then you're going to make an 8 GB 9060 XT, even though you could add $20 to charge $50 more. Sorry. Chris Rich writes in, nobody I know personally cares about battery life in laptops. I see a lot of commuters with laptops here in the UK, but buses come with USB charging ports, and trains and, of course, airports, even some airplanes now have actual sockets to plug into to charge your laptop. Is battery life overrated in laptops? Who genuinely needs it? I mean, yeah, this is a question I heavily raised in my Minis Forum V3 review. A pocket charger that I have that was $10 years ago can charge my tablet, I don't know, an extra 30% while I'm working. I can just pop that in there while I'm on an airplane. My answer is, yeah, I think it is a little overrated out. I still think there's a minimum. The minimum should be like 6 hours. But if you can do 6-hour battery life, after that, as long as you can charge it with a 15-watt charger, you basically can always charge it. It's an ease of use is, I think, now more so not a constraint. It's like it's more ease of use to have a long battery life so that you don't have to worry as much. But would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you get a pretty, like, I mean, to me, like, less than a 2-hour battery life is just a no-go. And then from there to like 6 hours, I think it's a pretty good, like,
Every
linear
time
increase
you can
in
pay more for it.
convenience. Yeah. And then after 6 hours, I think there's a drop off in return for what you're getting. But, like, I don't know. I guess like USB chargers on buses mitigate that, but there's also some worries about using USB chargers on buses.
Sure, I guess.
But, like, I don't know. Yeah, if you can charge, if you have access to a charger once throughout your workday or something, you're probably fine. With like a 4 to 6 hour battery life.
Angel of Cake writes in, with a lot of Unreal Engine 5 games running horribly on everything, do you think we will have a Unreal Engine 5 ready sticker on boxes next generation? No, but that's a funny joke.
Yeah. I mean, maybe once everything is on UE5 in 8 years or whatever, however long that adoption takes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think what the next gimmick will be. Probably just more ray tracing. I don't know, but you got to think, right? We're getting close. Nvidia needs a new gimmick.
Yeah.
I mean, G-Sync isn't really there. FSR4 is catching up. They need a new one.
Time to bring back PhysX. Damn it.
Oh, dang it. We can't even run it now. But on that note, I guess, I don't know why on that note, but that is the last note of the song we just sang for you about tech news.
I don't know if I like that.
I don't either. This is going to do it for Broken Silicon 308. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Please make sure that you subscribe to Moore's Law is Dead on YouTube. Ring the bell button to not miss upcoming content. Like the video, share the video, and then also support us on Patreon. We just had a new die shrink come out that has GPU shopping advice. I think there's some really good tidbits in there for both us and the community that you can get for the lowest tier on Patreon, $2. Speaking of that tier, also gives you access to a Discord, the ability to ask guest questions. The next guest will be High Yield, actually. We'll be looking at all of these new architectures that have come out and are coming out soon. And so he's doing a lot of Zen 6 stuff too, and RDNA 4 stuff. He's going to be a really good one. You can ask him questions. Join the Patreon, everybody. We cannot do this without our patrons. And then, yeah, I think that's it. Be nice to each other, I guess. I guess. Oh, and subscribe to Moore's Law is Dead. I'm sorry. Subscribe to Broken Silicon on a podcast app. Give us a review and set it to auto download. We're now part of a podcast network that really helps us a lot there as well. Grow if you make sure that whatever podcast app you use, the standard public version of Broken Silicon is being downloaded and put on your phone every week. We're trying to grow there as well. And so that would help us grow through the algorithms on podcast apps if they saw increased download rates there too. All right, the shilling is over. Dan, any final words?
I don't think so.
All right, everybody, have a good week.
Bye.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carmen Cry and Carrie Nosugada as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About/Support page. In the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Carrie Nosugada as well, you can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and Jean-Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong. We love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guest questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit, and give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels: Brad Medlin, Drita Foles, Z Jits, Daniel D, Deke, Nicholas Buckner, Aaron Close, Jan Rauner, Daniel Hyde, MJB1, GZ Ziggy, Toka, SNES Chalmers, Jem Ferrier, Velcom Alev, Jensen Wang, Grigorous Acker, Sarcastro, Chris Trish, Compressed AI Blocks, Hal Booma, Evan Dingle, Shredbird, Sammy Malas, Jordan Simkovic, The Boss Haas, Chrysantine, Jonathan, Nithra Zink, Jake Dude 23, Jake Martin, Zicky, Meat and Pork, Tim Robb, Ian Clifford, Gamers Unite, Travis Gooding, Mad, Zoot Taylor, Greg, Michael McGee, Batty Cakes, Stephen Coates, Amiable Chief, Mark Mitchell, Tommy, Aisha, James Anderson, Mark Raidmaker, Cole Addict, Cameron, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Michelle Pell, Win Wang, Hexapuma, Reginald Ari, Tika Autumn, Windstar, Corey Leonard, James I. Raider, Little Germany, Shay, Milton, Melodic Warrior, Brett Jones, Chuck Glennon, Mac Daffy, Stephen Dick, Justin Bussell, Austin Haggerty, Joe Foot, Brian Scanlon, Harlan, Jensen Angima, Joseph Kelly, Slushbaugh, Him Segung, Brian Wright, Jeffrey Gentleman, Sisyphos 7771, The Forbidden Juice, RB Racer, Alex Vega, Dr. J Mad, Free D, Michael Cozy, John Swin, Crystal Joe, Elbergun, Keycom, Solarized 80, Sputnik, Brian P, Hudat 42, Cornster 671, Panzer Winterhal, Richard, Omega Doge, Mr. Tiger, John Wick Boomstick, Hugo, and Ender Kiwi, Penguins, Love AI, 37 by 73, Curry King 3, Porcelain Oats, State Farm Steak, Nixus Mania, Rye Hill, Cheap Bulls, Sheriff Lotfi, Smash Axley, Kevin Kuntz, Kareem El Masri, Armand Vakatura, Callan Reichel, Jonathan Harris, Angel of Cake, and of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.